This is actually me. Let me just get that started. Jumping from controller to controller, demoing this thing sort of by myself here. Character selection screen, really preliminary UI. It's unfinished. This game still kind of in development. It's me kind of just choosing different ships, and again, I'll pop into the game screen here, and I'll be controlling ship to ship to just kind of make sure they all work. There is kind of a fun, what I think is fun. It's a little messy, but I still am kind of in love with the idea of having these crewmen be the health of your ship. That is from Star Control, but I thought it'd be fun to sort of represent them like they were living beings kind of walking around in the ship there. And of course, as you take damage, your ship, there's a little health pickup that pops up. As you take damage, these guys, they fly up into space and they die. Lots of happening here when you die. Also, there's a little death animation that happens. The player's character is actually swapped out, and there's just a death model that pops in that explodes and lets these little body parts bounce around the arena and stuff. And then a return respawn animation plays, and when that animation finishes, the player's characters swap back in and they regain control. It's going to happen here. Boom, he dies, exploding parts, he pops back in, and now the player has control again. This little space octopus guy, there's his little ink spray that kind of, it's hard to see through it, but he's got these smart missiles that these were kind of one of the first things I had to build for this game. And they have sort of a large collider, a spherical collider that pops out, and it pools the area for acceptable targets, and then it chooses the closest target on the fly. So if somebody else flies into range and becomes closer, it will adjust towards that and begin following it as well. And I wanted to create these little moments of kind of chaos, where players could be steering these weapons into one another, and that's why they're relatively slow attack speed and stuff here. Here's this space pirate that I managed to finish. He's got a rocket anchor that launches out. It will hit a target and suck it back in. His little guide to help you, and it hits a spaceship and launches it in. It actually hit bullets too. It happens right here where he shoots it and it pops back in. You can see that again. So he ends up shooting his own bullet, and he pulls the bullet towards himself. Kind of cool opportunities for skill shots, and just fun. Again, just kind of controlled chaos that adds to the fun of the game. Here's the rapid fire pickup he's going to grab, and it's going to just let him blast without restraint for a few seconds, and take that guy out. There's a game camera system too that's sort of adjusting. I'll talk about that in a second. Here I'll have a better sort of view of that. But now, here's those little crewmen. They're 2D animated. It's in a sort of a pseudo pixel art style. I made these guys in Flash actually, so they are vector art, but I just popped down a grid and kind of animated them. So here, basically their behavior is they alternate randomly between walking and idling, tapping their feet kind of impatiently, and then when they hit a collider on the side, they just invert direction. So that's kind of how they behave. I'm like, fine, and that's how they die out into space. And this is me in the Unity editor, just kind of showing off kind of how it's organized here. I wanted to iterate quickly over new ship designs, so I had things like sort of modular here, where you have ship speeds, acceleration, and then the top speed where they sort of peak out and they don't go much faster than that, and how fast they turn. And the idea was to have ships that were smaller and they were quicker, so they were harder to hit, and then maybe big, more powerful ships that are slower and easier target. And I wanted to be able to tweak these quickly on the fly. And also the ship weapon system is kind of the same way, where you can actually choose, is it going to be a fully automatic, semi-automatic, how quickly, how much time in between attacks, so you can adjust the rate of fire, how fast it attacks, by lowering this battery, the energy. When you attack, it uses up energy, so you can sort of adjust how fast does the energy recharge, how much battery does a ship have. There's even ship crewmen on here somewhere you can sort of choose. The weapons are pooled, There's a pooling system, so I can choose. I have 15 basically loaded into memory, and then they recycle themselves as you use them. Here's showing off the shield and game camera. This is an older version of the game, so the crewmen aren't here and everything, but yes, the shield, as you hold it down, depletes, and it also depletes as it takes damage. Once the shield breaks, you go, kind of squash and stretch, and you lose control of your ship. You're vulnerable for a little while. The game camera works. It tries to keep all the players into the screen, so as you fly further from each other, the camera pans out. And when you all fly near to each other, the camera will zoom in and get closer in on the combat. So it's kind of a simple artificial intelligence. It does a pretty good job. Sometimes there's a few quirks, but it does okay. Oh, and here is the. I built all these things in 3D except for the crewmen. Those are all 2D, but everything else is 3D. This is the octopus ship. His rig in Maya and his model in Maya, and he's just a combination of spline IK controls and different constraints on various other sort of custom controls that I've kind of built here to represent their legs. He's got 8 legs, and there's little 8 leg controls. Oh yes, I even built little cartoony eyes so you could kind of spring them back and forth and stuff. This is a little space helmet. I spent way too much time on the lore of these guys. It was kind of silly. Basically, you're not really the space octopus. You're there's little crewmen in these pods here that control them, and basically they're space octopus are their mortal enemies, so they've enslaved them, and they now ride them in outer space and just make them their little minions. So right, here's just me demoing this. Sort of the fluidity of these guys' arms. I thought they were kind of neat once you got them all rigged up. Once I got them all rigged up. And there's the idle animation of him just kind of floating in space and what that looks like inside Maya. After this, last thing is these are a couple pickups that got into the game. And here's rapid fire, bouncing around. And here's the little crewman pod. I imagine these guys are just jettisoned out into space. And this is health, right? If you roll over this guy, you can pick him up and recruit him in your crew and kind of bolster the health of your ship if you're damaged. So that's about it. I think it's somewhere around 30,000 lines of code so far, and it's definitely the biggest project that I've done solo. But I think it demonstrates, kind of a wide swath of what I'm capable of.